Imaro is a rousing adventure, a tale of a young man's continuing struggle to gain acceptance amongst his people and to break the cycle of alienation and violence that plagues his life. Imaro is heroic fantasy like it's never been done before, based on Africa and African traditions and legends. Charles Saunders has created Nyumbani, which means home in Swahili, an amalgam of the real, the semi-real, and the unreal. Imaro is the name of the larger-than-life warrior and outcast who travels across Nyumbani, searching for a home. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host Liam, aka Himbar, and today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of Charles R. Saunders' Imaro. Imaro, or Imaro, might say it different ways here, is a 1981 fix-up novel by Charles R. Saunders, who is considered the father of Sword and Soul, which is essentially a subgenre of sword and sorcery. It is sword and sorcery with African inspiration, African mythic inspiration, particularly, as opposed to something like European. It is definitely in the vein of something like Robert E. Howard or C.L. Moore even, or Carl Edward Wagner, but African in spirit and in story, and it's really good. I'm glad to actually finally be talking about it. We have some great weirdness here, honestly, and horror, really, that's kind of like in the vein of Ilmet and Lankmar, or Stormbringer, even. There is, of course, our outsider protagonist with an actual origin story that, for example, Conan and Jarell never get. Our hero is raised among the Ilyasai and Tamburure, I think I'm saying that right, but doesn't know who his father is. This seems rather cohesive like a novel, maybe a little less so near the end. Again, because it is a fix-up. The stories, which are chapters, originally appeared in the 70s, I believe in Dark Fantasy magazine. I'm not 100% sure. I should have written the note down. But the stories are Turkana Knives, The Place of Stones, Slaves of the Giant Kings, Horror in the Black Hills, and The City of Madness. We have a pretty good love interest as well in one of the women. I liked her. We also have these cool societies, right? We get to see a varying amount of societies here, right? There's not just one society. And we have societies that are kind of like band level. We have tribal societies. We have chiefdoms even. We also have ruins, which are always cool in fantasy. There's a good struggle here, not one that I would call really racial, as a callback to like the civil rights movement. Maybe it is there, but it's rather a personal struggle in some ways. I think this fits really well with the zoomed in focus that sword and sorcery normally does pretty well. And Imaro is definitely a character I feel like anyone can get behind. Is a very personable character. He is a very well-written one. There are a few more Imaro books, and I actually don't have them yet, so I want to get to those soon. But I think one thing that cannot be understated is how much Imaro was kind of a breakthrough for African-related themes and African authors as well, or African American, Black, I don't know. So stuff like that, though. It's rather seminal as far as that. And again, like I said, it spawned the genre of sword and soul, which I believe the bigger names would probably be Milton Davis and maybe Kirk Johnson as well. There's some few others that I'm not terribly familiar with this subgenre, but admittedly, I have only recently gotten acquainted with sword and sorcery intimately. So I am paying my dues to the greats of the past, and we'll hopefully get all caught up on the present here at some point. I'm getting a handle on it, but I think Saunders is one of those classics of sword and sorcery. If you're going to read sword and sorcery, it's good, I think, to read contemporary fiction, because I think that's honestly, these days, with the popularity of sword and sorcery and sword and soul, is, well, it's underappreciated. But of course, you want to read the classics as well. You have to understand those classics in some sense, right? So I think Imaro by Charles R. Saunders is definitely one of those that you cannot skip this in my mind. So you can't, just when you're reading Conan, Elric, Fought from the Grey Mouser, Kane, Jarell, add Imaro to that too. Anyways, this has been Liam Liam's Lyceum. I'll catch you next time.